If you want to learn more about tarot cards and how to use them, then check out this video. Find out the difference between oracle cards and tarot cards, different tarot spreads, and how to actually pull your own card. And be sure to stay right to the end, where I'm going to tell you about the most common misconception about the tarot. Hey, I'm Amanda from theintuitivewife.com, intuitive healer and spiritual coach working with women to bust through their energetic blocks and finally live their soul purpose. If you're watching this video, then you may just be getting started with tarot cards, or maybe you're like me and were feeling completely overwhelmed and had no idea how to even start with tarot cards. Well, then you're in the right place. On the plus side, tarot cards are not as complicated or overwhelming or intimidating as they seem to you right now. Okay, so let's start with the difference between tarot cards and oracle cards. They are both divination tools, so there are a lot of similarities. So even though the cards are similar, they're still very different in their own unique ways. For example, tarot cards will always have 78 cards in a deck. Tarot cards are much more structured than oracle cards. There's a lot of history behind tarot, which is why there's a lot of the same imagery in every deck that you get. Like, for example, there will always be the wheel, and there's always going to be certain elements in that card, no matter what deck you look at, because of the historical value. Because of the history behind that card. The theme can always be different, but the cards themselves will always be the same, and that is because there's so much history behind tarot cards. So usually when people are making their own tarot decks, they really try to incorporate the history into each card to make it cohesive. If you compare that to oracle cards, there is really no limit to how many cards can be in an oracle deck. There's no hard, fast rule. This is completely up to the artist. Tarot is considered to be a fixed system, which means the definition will more or less always be the same, but the artwork will change depending on what deck you're looking at. Whereas the oracle decks are considered to be a fluid system. The definition of the cards are spoken through the lens of the author. Back to tarot cards, there are always going to be 4 suits, just like playing cards. But tarot cards will always have wands, pentacles, swords, and cups. Now, sometimes, depending on the deck, they'll change up the names a little bit, like wands could be called sticks, for example, but it's still going to be, in most cases, a wooden element of some sort. So they don't stray too much, and there will always be 4 suits. Where in oracle cards, there's no suits, there's no rules. It's just the theme and the imagery, the lens of the artist, that's it. So those are the most common differences between tarot and oracle. But like I said, they are both divination tools, so there are a lot of similarities between them, and it's all really personal preference. Now, back over to tarot cards. I had said that there were 78 cards in each deck and that there were 4 suits. There are always 22 major arcana cards. Just for the record, arcana, arcana, tomato, tomato. Not only are there 22 major arcana cards, there are 56 minor arcana cards. The major arcana cards are numbered from 21 to 1, with the Fool being the unnumbered card. The major arcana cards are said to be the strongest cards in the deck and the most impactful. They're said to show the bigger picture, long-term direction or situations that you may experience, and the minor arcana cards are usually associated with everyday actions or situations or decisions that you may face. If you haven't yet, I suggest you check out my previous video, which is all about oracle cards, how to use them, how do they work. Because oracle and tarot cards are both divination tools, there are a lot of similarities. So I will leave the link for that video up here and in the description box below so that you can check that out at the end of this video. So how do tarot cards work? Just like oracle cards, they are a tool. So I had said in the oracle video that it's a way for you to communicate with your angels, your guides, the universe. You ask a question and it provides you an answer by either flying a card out of the deck or guiding you or leading you to a specific card or set of cards. It's really just a way for you to get guidance on a question or issue or situation that you are looking for clarity or guidance on. Now, one of the most common questions that is associated with tarot cards is there a right way or wrong way to use tarot cards? And that depends on who you ask. But since you're here with me on my channel, my opinion is a big, firm no. There is no right or wrong way to use tarot cards. It is however you see fit. It is a personal preference. They are a spiritual tool for you to connect with your angels, guides, universe, and I really don't feel that anyone should put any rules or stipulations on how this tool should be used. Now, some people who are just getting started with tarot cards feel a little bit self-conscious because they're pulling the cards and they're relying on the guidebook. That's completely okay. It's absolutely okay to pull a card, rely on the guidebook, or to do a spread and then look up each card and the meanings by looking at the guidebook or looking online, whichever one you want. It's okay to do that. I, of course, being the girl who makes videos on intuition and intuitive development, would love for you to eventually one day step away from the guidebook and rely on your intuition to do the reading. But to be honest with you, even when I'm doing tarot readings, I do occasionally still go to the guidebook. Sometimes it feels like there is something missing in the message, so I quickly go through the guidebook to see is there anything that's sticking out at me, something that I might have missed. And sometimes I just want to see the artist's wording on it or the author's wording on it. How did they describe this card? What is their perspective on this card? So I don't want you to feel like you are chained to the guidebook, but I don't want you to feel like you need to throw it away forever until the end of time either. But if you do want to start developing your intuition, then be sure to check out my previous videos. I'll put the link up here, and it is all about intuitive development and exercises to help you develop your intuition. And fun fact, tarot is actually what helped me to develop and I feel like propel my intuitive abilities. So, food for thought. With that being said, there are some people out there, a lot of people out there, who are sticklers for the rules when it comes to tarot, the rules. And they insist that you absolutely must memorize every single card in the deck. I don't know about you. I don't have the capacity in here to remember more things than I already do. I already struggle to remember my day-to-day life, okay? This is actually one of the reasons why I waited so long to get started with tarot, because I felt already right off the bat that there were too many rules. I didn't know how to get started. What if I pulled a card and I couldn't remember it and I would draw a blank and then I'd feel like I was doing something wrong? I felt like I didn't know where to start and it was too overwhelming, too intimidating. So what I did was not start at all. If you are feeling overwhelmed or intimidated by tarot, please do not let that stop you from experimenting with it, getting started with it, playing with it. I really feel like there do not need to be any rules. You can, of course, read up on the cards. You can rely on the guidebook. You can try, of course, to memorize the descriptions of the cards if that's what you want to do. There are some people who suggest that you have a journal with you, a tarot journal for when you're doing readings, so that when you pull the card, you can write down the intuitive hits that were coming through, or you can have short little descriptions or definitions to each card so you can quickly flip through the book. If that makes you feel better, if you want to have a little journal beside you to do it, you can absolutely do that. And it's totally okay if you start doing a tarot journal and then you realize partway through it's not really working for you. Something I think that is not often communicated is, hey, you should do it this way. But then they don't say it's okay if that doesn't work. There are tons of other ways that you can approach tarot or any divination tool or spiritual practice or intuitive development. That's the best part about spirituality and intuitive development. or even just having a personal practice. There's really no one certain way to do it. You really do have the freedom to experiment and try things out and see what works for you. And if it doesn't, it's okay. Try something else. For myself personally, I feel like if I had been so hyper focused on memorizing the descriptions of the cards, it wouldn't have allowed me the freedom to explore the cards. I really feel like I would have been so stuck on what the card should have meant that I wouldn't have given myself the opportunity to open up my channels and allow myself to receive intuitive hits. And having said that, like, don't get me wrong, when I first started with tarot, I was going to the guidebook, I was reading books on it, I was doing a spread. I'd have the book open next to me on the couch and I would do a spread, and then I would line up, okay, card one, this means my present situation. And then I would go to the guidebook, because that was a different book, and be like, okay, this is the Fool. And I would read the description of the Fool in the book, and I would try to piece together what the definition in the guidebook meant and how it related to my present situation according to the tarot spread. I definitely overcomplicated it, but I kind of feel like that's sort of where everyone starts with tarot. I really do feel like everyone just kind of spins in the beginning for a little while. And I actually got started with tarot kind of by accident. I had always been drawn to tarot. I'd always felt overwhelmed and intimidated by it the more I learned about it along the way. I actually ended up babysitting a tarot deck for one of my friends who was moving, and the deck was new for her, and she was so afraid that she was going to lose the deck or it was going to get harmed in some way, and she asked me to hold it until she could move and get settled in. Of course, I said yes. So probably after 6 or 7 tries of playing with them is when my intuition kind of started to wake up, or maybe I should say is when I started to realize that something was happening outside of me reading the guidebook. I would hear or see or think a specific sentence, and then I would open the guidebook and it would be one of the first like 2 or 3 sentences in the guidebook. It took me a little while to piece that together. What I didn't realize is that using the tarot cards was actually helping me to develop my clairaudience and clairvoyance. So that is, I think, the main reason why I tell people not to be overwhelmed with tarot. Go with the flow, and you don't need to memorize the definitions of the cards. Okay, so let's move on. How do you use tarot cards? Well, tarot cards are used pretty similarly to oracle cards. You can do a 1-card pull. You can do spreads. You can journal on the card. You can meditate on a card or a spread. You can create your own spread by asking a series of questions. You can technically pull a single card for tarot. Like I said earlier, this is all personal preference. For me personally, when I am pulling a single card, I really love doing that with oracle cards. I feel like it's a different energy for that. So I use oracle cards for a 1-card pull. When I want to deep dive into something and I want a whole lot of clarity and information and gather as much as I possibly can on something, that's when I break out my tarot deck. I feel like I'm able to really connect deep to situations and really gather information by using a tarot card, easier than I can with my oracle decks. But again, that is personal preference. I know people that are the complete opposite. I know people who have no desire to even touch an oracle deck. So feel free to experiment, play around with things, mix the decks together if you want. There's no rule on that either. If you are looking to use a tarot spread, there are tons of different places you can go to use an existing spread, from books to Pinterest to Google. I also have a little package of tarot spreads. I'll put the link down below. They're really great for everyday use, from relationships to career to life purpose. Of course, like I said earlier, you can make up your own spread by asking a series of questions and pulling a card for each question. Probably the most popular tarot spreads are a 3-card spread, past, present, future, and also the Celtic Cross, which I think a 7 or 9. I don't even remember. There's a lot of cards to cross. So I don't do that one very often. But those are the two most popular spreads that I can think of when it comes to tarot. Now, something that tends to stress people out when they are first getting started with tarot cards is reversals. If you don't want to do reversals, don't do reversals. You do not have to do reversals if you don't want to, especially if you're just getting started and you feel that they're a little overwhelming or you don't really know how to get started with them. You can absolutely just start out with reading the cards upright first until you kind of get into a groove. And then when you're ready, if you're ready, then you can start incorporating reversals. If you are just getting started, maybe you haven't even gotten your deck yet, and you don't really know what to look for in a deck, you don't really know how to buy a deck, then click on the video over here. It will bring you to one of my videos from last year that goes through the steps of what to look for when you're buying a deck. It's technically a video on how to pick oracle cards, but it's exact same information for oracle cards as it is for tarot cards. So if you are looking to buy your first deck, then definitely check out that video at the end of this video. Okay, so a few commonly asked questions. 1, do I need to be a witch to use tarot cards? No, you don't have to identify as a witch, you don't have to be a witch. You can just have an interest in tarot cards, and that's okay. You don't need to put a label on it. Usually a question in and around the environment for tarot cards, like do I need to pull my tarot cards on an altar, or do I need to have a pretty altar cloth, or do I need to pull the cards on like a tablecloth of some sort? No, no, and no. You can pull cards wherever you want to. I used to pull cards sitting in my car in the parking lot before I went into work. I would also take a deck of cards with me on my lunch hour to go to a meeting room and hang out with a friend, and we would pull cards together and just hang out. It doesn't need to be serious. It doesn't need to be fancy. It doesn't need to be pretty. And it doesn't need to define or label you in any way. Another common question around tarot cards, which doesn't usually come up at the very, very beginning, but after people have been using them for a little while, then they start to wonder, how do I store my cards? And again, this is all personal preference. You can leave your cards in the box that they came in. You can put your cards in a little baggie like this. This was literally the only one I can find, so it looks kind of like lame. But you can put them in a little baggie like this. You can wrap them in silk. You can put them in a silk baggie. Whatever you want to do, whatever makes you happy, whatever you feel drawn to. And there are also cards who have their own kind of energy. So I had a friend text me, I think it was last month, and she got a new deck, and she said, my deck feels like it needs to be wrapped in a cloth. Okay. Wrap your deck in a cloth. You can do whatever you want to. And I think I just said that cards have their own energy. I'm going to be doing a video, it's probably going to be my next video, on the energy of cards and how to connect to the cards, because each card has their own energy, so sometimes it's really easy to just pick up a deck and just hit the ground running. And sometimes it takes you a while to kind of get into a groove. So be sure to hit like and subscribe so that I know, so that I know you want to know, and subscribe so that you can be notified of when that video finally goes live. Now, I said at the beginning of this video that I would tell you about the most common misconception when it comes to tarot. And I think that there are 2, actually, or 3, I don't know. Let's see how this goes. The first one is, do I need to be gifted my first deck or any decks? No, you do not need to be gifted a deck. You can absolutely go buy your own deck whenever you want. There are a lot of reasons why I think you should buy your own deck instead of waiting for someone to buy one for you. For starters, you might not even feel comfortable telling someone else that you're interested in tarot or asking them to buy you a deck. And what if you ask that person to buy you a deck and then they don't buy it? You're just going to be sitting here waiting and waiting and waiting for a deck to just show up and land in your lap. And I think we should all be empowered to make our own decisions. If you want a deck, please go buy a deck. You do not need to be gifted a deck. I don't know where that came from, but it is absolutely not true at all. Another misconception about tarot is that they are evil. They are not evil. They're not evil at all. I think there is so much history behind tarot, and there have been so many historical events throughout the years that somehow they got a bad rap. And I think it's time to just kind of let that go. Tarot cards are not evil. And the death card does not mean death. And maybe that's where the evil rumor came from when it comes to tarot. That, oh my god, there's a death card in there, you're going to pull the death, you're predicting someone's death. No, you are not predicting someone's death. The death card represents spiritual transformation. It represents the end of a chapter or a new beginning or letting go of something that no longer serves you. Endings, transformation. So, I hope that answered your questions about tarot, and I hope if you were feeling overwhelmed or intimidated that you don't feel that way anymore. But let me know in the comments if you do still have any questions around tarot cards or what is holding you back from buying your own tarot. And remember that this channel is all about intuition, woo-woo, metaphysical. So if that's something you're interested in, be sure to hit like and subscribe. And I highly recommend you check out the Oracle card video that is up on your screen right now.